The weight of a decadent society will weigh heavy on you, even if you do not understand why. By the time I was in university, the social environment was becoming more hostile. The Me Too movement was picking up heat, and there was a lot of change, a lot of reconstruction being implemented within the society, within social interactions. Changes that at the time I did not understand what the changes were, why they had to be implemented, or where they had originated from. If you had watched my Pain is a Choice video, you might have inferred that by the time I got to university, I was a tad bit autistic. I was socially maladroit. I hadn't socialized at all in high school and had had little time to practice in the time between high school and university for that time I spent on the mountain. Well, a couple of months before the mountain, I had to go to my matric dance, and I remember sitting at a restaurant with my date for we had decided that we had to meet before the actual dance so as to build rapport, that it may not be awkward when we get there on the day. For my date had been organized for me for reasons that you may already know. She looked at me with absolute shock as she sat across from me while I told her my story, or a little bit about myself, about my life, about what I do on a daily basis. And she exclaimed, she said, "Dude, what the hell have you been doing for the past couple of years? You are literally living the life of a dead man." My eyes trailed away from her and up over her shoulder. Behind her was another man sitting on his laptop, typing up an assignment or whatever work he had been given. Well, I looked at him and I saw that he had been looking at me for a while, for he looked like a man that wasn't working at all. He had been listening in on our conversation and seemed rather intrigued by what we were discussing, by the question I had just been asked. And he too waited for an answer. He looked more startled than the girl sitting in front of me. Well, needless to say, I did not answer that question. I changed the subject and moved on to more important subjects. I walked into university, pure and clean, straight from a boys' school. I was like the country girl that had moved from the farms straight into the city for the first time. My eyes were wide open. I was excited, ready to learn, ready to take in everything that the university had to offer, ready to experience all that there was. And there was a lot to experience. I asked my friend a lot of weird questions, I would say. Questions like, why do all these people hug so much? For every conversation and every interaction had to start and end with a hug. I also wondered as to why all the voices of most of the girls were so high pitched. Because I'm closer, and from where I came from, most of the women had very deep and rusty voices. I'd assumed that all women sounded like that. That was what I was accustomed to. That is what I expected. Well, I was taken by surprise when I got to university. But it didn't take long to adjust. It was an entirely new world. one I was excited to be in, one that I had much anticipation for, a world where I planned to build myself up, to rise and develop a personality from the depth and the darkness that had been the past couple of years. And that's what I did for majority of the year. I joined the gym and built muscle. I spoke to a whole load of people. I joined different friend groups and learned about different cultures and traditions. I read a lot of books in self-development, self-help, self-improvement, and all the sorts. I even got a girlfriend and started dating. I was excited to be alive, and boy, was it exciting to finally feel alive, to have agency over my own life. But this excitement was short-lived. In the ignorance of my youth, I naturally thought that all things that shined were gold. All things that are new to you, or all people that are new to you, generally put their best foot forward and hide whatever darkness, whatever dirt they may come with. And that was what I had experienced for majority of the year. And I'd grown accustomed to it. The novelty had died out. I'd gained experience. I'd gained age. And in this age, I'd gained understanding. And with this understanding, all kinds of distortions started to surface. For my eyes were not full of wonder anymore. The honeymoon phase was over. The most noticeable change occurred when I was in second year. For by this time, the Me Too movement was picking up. And with that movement, all kinds of other movements also started to gain steam and charged full force. There was this body positivity movement, and all women were encouraged, and some of them even wanted, to free the nipple. This was something that had never occurred to me, a thought that I never thought I would have to think about. What exactly was this nipple being freed from? Who said it was oppressed? And how was it going to be freed? It wasn't that the woman just stopped wearing bras, because there were probably women that didn't wear bras before, and it was never something that demanded any attention. It was never something that sent a statement, that had a message behind it. This time, there was emphasis on the fact that the nipple had to be visible and poke through whatever clothing the woman would be wearing at that time. It was an overnight sensation. One day, everything was normal, and the next day, there were nipples everywhere. Every third girl had her nipple exposed and poking out through her clothing. I had absolutely no idea what this helped with. What did this change? And why were these women so adamant that the men accept this new change? I'd say for the first few weeks the men celebrated. We got to see more nipples, and it was free. But I'd say that after a few months, it got old. The novelty died out. It wasn't as drastic anymore. It wasn't a change. It became the norm. And with this, other things started to change. For I don't think this movement, this change in clothing, only changed the woman. It didn't just give them more freedom of expression. I would say the most drastic change occurred within the men. We got desensitized to seeing nipples, a part of a woman's body that used to be private before, a part that was only revealed to the woman's romantic partner in privacy, was now exposed for the public to see. A part that used to get men aroused now made them feel nothing at all. It lost its significance. It was cheapened overnight. This not only changed our arousal meters, it also changed how we interacted with women. Even if you couldn't articulate it at the time, you felt it deep within that the interactions felt less valuable. They were less respectable. For the only woman that can expose her nipples in public and not only retain her value and respect, but raise it, is a woman that is a virgin and that is young. These two conditions must be met. The way we had and viewed sex changed also. It now took more to get aroused. And on the extreme side of things, you kind of felt a disdain for the act itself. A phrase we had thought was meaningless before. Her body, her choice, had now changed the quality of life for all men across the board. Whether you were a man that was sexually active or not, you felt this change. For the value of sex that was already low had now been lowered to a point where you had to sit down and reevaluate as to whether it was worth investing in at all. But this was not the only loss. For women, lost respect for men. In particular, they lost respect for the father, and they lost respect for the virgin mother and the son. You'd hear it in their tone and their choice of words when they spoke about men. They would say things like, "Akhondo indoda, zinkunkuma ezaziyo, utatakho akayonto, amadoda zizinja." On random days, I would actually ask these women that I was in relationships with that would say these things as to if I was the things that they compared men to. And they'd always be taken aback and shocked and kind of backtrack and give an excuse saying that, "Not you, all the others." But I knew what they had said, and the meaning was clear. For these were words that we men were expected to forgive. Words that were spoken to us by our mothers, our sisters, our acquaintances, our classmates, our co-workers, our girlfriends, and our wives. This was the result of the bastardization of the position of man and woman within the hierarchy in the patriarchy. You must understand that the masculine role comes with very particular responsibilities that only men are built to fulfill. The nature of the role does not change just because you have chosen to define it in a different way that suits you. What these women were experiencing was a phenomenon that I call the death of difference, that every man that assumes a position of leadership must experience. The anger, contempt, and rage that comes with this revelation from the fulfillment of this position is usually sated by the fear of God within the man's heart, a fear that these women, by definition, did not and could not have within their hearts. For their entire ideology was created by women who had never had a single positive relationship with another man in their entire lives. Not with a father, a son, a husband, an uncle, or a boyfriend. This only occurs in a decadent society, in a society where there is no regulation of the sexual marketplace, where sex has little to no value. There are no fathers in the home, and the people in the society have absolutely no respect for the image of the father, the image of the Virgin Mother, and the image of the Son. They don't even know what these images are. They have absolutely no idea why these images are so sacred, why they warrant so much respect as to inspire fear within the hearts of the men that understand them, that hold them in high esteem. Fear that can cure the rage that comes with the revelation of the death of difference. For Jesus did say that, "My children die because of a lack of knowledge." For these women had seen and understood and had noticed that men are the same. And do not get me wrong, they are right. They are absolutely correct in this observation. But what they did lack were the shoulders, the heart, and the position in the hierarchy within the patriarchy in order to bear this burden of leadership. That is why it could not be converted into power, and that all this energy that weighed upon their bodies just came out as disdain, hatred, and disgust for men across the board. As a man, you will feel this disgust, even if you do not understand what you are feeling or where it comes from. You will search for an answer, even if you do not know what the question is, where the question comes from, or how it involves you. You may even feel depressed for long stretches of time and have absolutely no clue as to why. The weight of a decadent society will weigh heavy on your shoulders. It will weigh heavy on your heart too, regardless of whether you are sexually successful or not. Decadence does not differentiate. It is not exclusionary. It involves you, whether you choose to ignore it or not. Men understand life too early, and women too late. For I speak about epiphany phases a lot, and the epiphany phases that I think I went through between the ages of 19 and 20 were epiphany phases that I only noticed women go through between the ages of 21 to 25. And these were the more observant women. For the ones that were not so observant, only realized these truths throughout the ages of 27 to 29, and by this time, it was too late. They didn't get the picture because they had been observant. The picture was forced upon them as they realized that they had spent all their youth and had no investments to show for it. For in a very instinctual way, if you are a man, you will abstain from relationships and from sex, whether you understand why or not. For you are in the desert with nothing on all sides, and you do not have a compass. Understand that it is not the decadence that causes this chaos, for there are many societies and cultures where the respect for the image of the father is not necessary at all. For in those cultures, there are no fathers. The fear of the father is not necessary. For in these cultures, the women are usually pregnant by the age of 14 and spend their entire lives bearing babies. And most usually die during childbirth. And the men aren't fortunate either, for they usually do not make it past the age of 30. Fathers aren't really necessary until a child turns 14. If a father is not present during those first 14 years, it doesn't really make much of a difference within the child's life. For if they are not in a Zoistic culture, then the father would have to teach the sons how to survive and fend for themselves. He would also prepare his daughters for marriage and negotiate a fair partner for his daughters within the existing sexual marketplace. And for the sons, they would usually have to go through a rite of passage, an initiation that would prepare them for the hardships of marriage. In these Zoistic cultures, there are no gods to watch over the tribes. They have no angels, no ancestors, and no spirits to guide them and show them the way. Life is short and expedient. And the most important factor is that teenagers do not exist. There is no middle class within these cultures. The chaos you feel is caused by the pressure and expectations placed on you by your God, gods, your ancestors, your angels, your guides, and your spirits. As you live within a culture, within a society that has absolutely no regulation of the sexual marketplace whatsoever. Our fathers and elders do not own the value of our sex and love anymore. They have no leverage. Love and sex is owned by the universities and the corporations. But even though they may have the ownership, they have absolutely no right to regulate the sexual marketplace whatsoever. The ones who have the rights have no power, and the ones who have the responsibility and the power have no rights. This is how we get to the point where the people within a society believe that love and sex are free, for they have no value within the sexual economy. They also believe that who you have sex with and how you have sex with them is a completely private matter that does not involve anyone else and does not affect anyone besides the two people that are partaking within the act. In our current cultural orientation, we know, if only intuitively, that sex and love are neither free nor private. They have their own marketplace, and trade occurs according to value. As you slowly realize that the economy has crashed, you must understand that only pain can save you from this doom, from this chaos that you find yourself in. You must choose pain.